Now let's start with preferences. Preferences are called as the first step to data persistence. Okay. First of all, let's understand what preferences are. Whenever you are creating an application, that application will have some by default values. For example, if I have a music player application, that application will have the volume, the current track which is being played, the current position of the track which is being played, etc. These items are called as preferences of the application, and whenever someone quits out of the application, then too these preferences should be kept as they are. Means their value should not change, or the value should be as the value set by the user. For example, if you are using the music player application and you set the volume to 65, that volume of 65 should remain at 65 until you change it. Even if you come out of the application and then come back in again, then to the value of that volume level should be 65 only. Okay, to do this we will be using preferences. This is the first step to persist data on your Android phones. Okay, so if we can store data across various launches of the applications, then it is called as data persistence. You have to understand this. Each application of Android has a space reserved inside its memory called as sandbox. Okay, each application has a different sandbox. Inside this sandbox you can store data for that application, and that application data is nothing but the user preference, and this space is called as shared preferences. Okay, again, the data which is present inside shared preferences is in the form of key value pairs. So if you want to store three values, you have to have three keys. For example, in the music player application, you will be having keys of volume, current track, and current position. Okay, and they will have separate values. Let's start using shared preferences. To use shared preferences, we have to follow the given steps. Step 1 is to get the reference of the shared preferences with the help of get shared preferences method. There is a method called as get shared preferences. As you call this method, you will be able to get the reference of the shared preferences. Once you get the reference of the shared preferences, to edit the shared preferences, you have to use shared preferences.editor. As in case of alert dialog, we had used alert dialog.builder to build the object. Over here we have to use shared preferences.editor to edit that area of shared preferences. Then you have to put the values inside the shared preferences.editor object. After putting the values, you have to say commit. When you say commit, it will save all the changes that you have made in the shared preferences. And to get the values, we have to straight away use the shared preferences object. Okay, so to put the values, we'll use shared preferences.editor, but to get the values, we can use the shared preferences object directly. I hope the steps are clear to you. They will be much more clearer as we develop the application of shared preferences. Let's start by saving some data of the user. Let's create a new project called as shared preference test and make the layout as shown. Okay, so over here you have 5 controls. The first control is the text view that we already know. This is a seek bar that is used to set the volume in most applications. This is again a text view, an edit text, and a button. What should happen is whenever I click on save, all the information that is entered by me in the project should be saved in the shared preferences area, and when I launch the application again, that information should get loaded back. Okay, so this is the seek bar. Let's give the name of that as skb volume. This is the edit text. Let's give the name of this as txt base level. That's the button. We'll give the name of this as btn save. Okay, before starting with the code, you have to understand that whenever we will be launching the application, reading will be done first, and then whenever we click on save, writing will be done after that. Okay, so first we will read that, then write it, then read it back again. Okay, so initially when there are no values, then you have to specify some default values for the properties of the shared preferences. So whenever you will start the application, you will first read all the shared preferences. After reading it, when you click on save, you will save the shared preferences. I hope we are making sense over here. Let's start doing that. So the user data would be loaded from the shared preferences when the activity is created. So whenever you'll be creating the activity, at that time you'll be loading that data from shared preferences. The user data would be saved in the shared preferences when the user clicks on save. So as soon as the user clicks on the save button, the data should be saved inside the shared preferences. Every shared preference file has a unique name. Okay, whenever you will be creating the shared preferences, at that time you have to give a unique name to each of the shared preference file. In our case, we'll keep that file name as settings. As we saw earlier, each shared preference value is stored in the form of key value pairs. In our case, the keys will be volume and base level. Okay. So let's write the Java code for the onCreate method. We'll get the reference of the controls, final seek bar, edit text and button. First we have to load the preferences. So we'll first get the reference of the shared preferences by saying final shared preferences equals to get shared preferences. Can you guess what is this settings? Correct. The settings is the name of the file name that we want for the shared preferences. Then let's load them. We'll say skb volume, that is the seek bar, dot set progress. Whatever progress that you want to set over here. This progress will be obtained from the shared preferences. So we'll say preferences dot get int, and we'll get the int volume, that was the key of our shared preferences. The volume's default value must be 0. So before we have written the value of the shared preferences, we have to read it. So when we are reading that value, it should have a default value in it. That default value should be 0. So what we said over here, the seek bar progress should be obtained from the preferences. That preferences should be the volume, and if the volume is not set, then get the default value, which is 0. Similarly, let's do it for the base level. The base level can be a text because it can have a value like 0 decibels, 1 decibels, 2 decibels. So that decibels is in form of a text or a string. So we'll say txt base level dot set text, the preferences dot get string, because we are getting a string from there. The by default value of base level as the key should be 0, but when we change that value, the default value will not be used, but the saved value will be used. Okay, so when we click on save, we have to first get the editor of the shared preferences by saying shared preferences dot editor. The object name is editor equals to preferences dot edit. This preferences is the object of the shared preferences class. Then you have to put the values inside the preferences. So we will say editor, that is the object of the shared preferences dot editor, dot put int. Over here we said get int, so we have to say put int the key, that is the volume, comma the seek bar volume dot get progress. I hope you are getting the analogy. When you say set progress, it sets the progress. When you say get progress, it gets the progress. Then similarly we will say editor.putString. The base level is the key, and we get the base level from txt base level.getText.toString. Then we can straight away say editor.commit. As soon as we say editor.commit, it saves all the changes that you have made inside the preferences into the shared preferences memory. Then we can straight away close the bracket. This will actually save all the data that you have pressed on save and want to save it. Okay, so whenever we drag the seek bar to the place, at that time this will be saved, and when we come back to the application again, it will be loaded back again and shown to us at the output. So let's do it and see how do we get the output of it. Let's do it for shared preferences. We'll go to File, New, Android Application Project. Give the project name as Shared Preferences. Inside this, give the package name as com.fitech. Give the build SDK as Android 2.3.1. Deselect the custom launcher icon button. Give the title of the activity or the application as Shared Preferences Demo. The application gets created. We want in the layout, the type should be linear layout. Let me add a text view to it. Let me add a seek bar to it. Then let's add another text view to it. Okay, let's add one more edit text to it, and let's add a button to save it. Okay, let me just right click on the text view, edit the text, and keep the text as choose a volume level. Okay, let me give the seek bar's ID to say SKB volume. Let's change the text on the second text view to be enter base level. Change the ID of this to txt base level. Change the hint on this to, that's fine, hint on this to base level decibels. Let's change the width of the button to match parent, ID of the button to btn save, and text on the button to save preferences. Okay, once we are done, the layout part is over, so we can close it safely. We'll go to the source inside the package. We'll go to main activity, remove the code for the menu because we don't need it. Then let's do step 1, get the control reference as a final button btn save equals to button find view by id r.id.btn save. Then I have final edit text txt volume or txt base level equals to, we have to cast the reference of txt base level, so we'll say edit text find view by id r.id.txt base level. Then we'll have final seek bar skb volume equals to seek bar find view by id r.id.skb volume. When first we have to load the preferences, so let's say final shared preferences sp equals to get shared preferences. The name of the file over here was settings, and the mode should be say 0 because the mode is not of much issue over here now. So let's keep the mode over here as 0. Once we are done with this, then let's load the preferences in the controls. So let me say skb volume dot set progress. The progress will come from the shared preferences, so we'll say sp dot get int. The key for the volume is volume itself, and if the volume is not loaded, we'll give the default value as 0. Similarly, I'll say skb volume, we will keep the base level as well, so we'll say txt base level dot set text. The text will come from the shared preferences, so we'll say sp dot get string. The key for the base is bass level, and default value is say 0 decibels. Okay, so until the shared preferences are saved by the user, the default preferences will be 0 and 0 dB. Now let's write the on click listeners for save button. So we'll say btn save dot set on click listener, new on click listener. Let's import the on click listener over here. Now once the on click listener has been imported, you can directly take the editor object of this. So I'll say shared preferences dot editor edit equals to sp, that is the shared preference dot edit. Okay, it will get the editor object for this. Then you can simply say edit dot put int. The key for the volume is volume. The value will come from the seek bar dot get progress. Similarly, I'll say edit dot put string. The key is base level, and the value will come again from shared preferences. So I'll say will come from the text of that base level, txt base level dot get text dot toString. I'll say edit dot commit. The commit word is very essential. If you will not do commit, then the shared preferences will not be saved. Then you can straight away say toast dot make text, get application context, your preferences are saved. Okay, let me say toast dot length short dot show. Let's run this application and see if we can get the output. We have not done anything fancy over here. We have straight away taken the main activity XML file, added the controls over here, saved the data of the controls inside the shared preferences by shared preferences.editor object, read that data back with the help of the shared preferences object by saying sp.getInt and sp.getString. Just right click on this and say run as Android application. Let's see if we can get the output working. The application has been loaded. As you can see, the initial value of this is 0 dB and there is no volume level. Let me just increase the volume level to some part, and let's give the base level over here to say 7 or 8 dBs. I'm going to 1, 2, 3 and give it say 8 decibels and say save preferences. Your preferences are saved. Now how do we know that the preferences are saved? Even if we go out of the application and come back in again, we have shared preferences over here. Then too you can see the data which we had in the previous launch of the application still persists. That means I am able to actually store the data for infinite amount of time in the memory of the Android OS. This is all because of shared preferences. If I just change this thing again and say save preferences and go back and again launch the application, the data will be as it is because I am able to load that data again from the preferences.